Welcome into the Day One Football Podcast. I am your host, Mike Nafziger, at Day One Big Mike. I'm here with at Day One Daddy and Ben Congram, our Saints fan of our friend group. How are you guys doing? Are you ready to get into a quick Week 2 preview?
Oh, baby, am I ever. Excited to be here. Week 1 was amazing. Excited for some more football.
Yeah, I am pretty fired up for another week of fantasy and DraftKings. I won a whole dollar last week, so
What?
what happens when you're betting on those 25-cent drafts, eh? Okay.
All right. So first we'll go into the A1 news as per usual. And then Steve brought back Trick or Trade. And then we'll get into Saints inquiries and questions. And then we'll have a couple matchups of the week, a couple players that we like, and then a couple games that we like. So let's get into the A1 news. First up is injuries, as always. We had a report today that Chris Godwin was in concussion protocol after taking a head-to-head hit in the Saints game. Steve, are you concerned with this at all, or what are you thinking with this?
So from what I understand, it's from a hit that he took on Sunday, but he didn't report it until Wednesday. So he didn't start having symptoms, or he didn't believe it was an issue until Wednesday. But with Mike Evans' hamstring not being right, I'm going to say go pick up Scotty Miller. He looked decent in the game. He didn't look bad. Brady seemed to like him, so I think he could be a decent start this week if Godwin doesn't play. So grab him now if he hasn't already been picked up. Ben, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree on the Scotty Miller. Brady seemed to like that connection. He always likes that little slot receiver for those passes. The Bucs play the Panthers, I think. So a lot of points in the first Panthers game against the Raiders. So definitely some fantasy points to be had, especially if Godwin's out and Evans is still going to have that nagging hamstring, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the Scotty Miller take. I know he went in almost every single waiver wire that was this week. But on to some good news. Miles Sanders has been practicing fully. Everyone finally gets basically their second round pick in every fantasy draft back. Great news. Do you guys want to comment on it at all? Steve, maybe?
I'm obviously, if he's playing in the game, you have to start him because the draft capital was too high in your fantasy leagues. Second round, some people draft him in the first. So yes, I am starting him, but you also have to realize that he probably won't have the full workload that you were expecting. Boston Scott really didn't show out too much last week, but I believe actually Boston Scott got hurt in the game. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he got hurt. So I still don't expect a full workload, but you have to start him if you have him. Ben?
Yeah, I agree. I'm a guy that picked up Boston Scott last week to no effect. But Sanders is going to be back. That Eagles line didn't look good, but they're playing a pretty tough Washington front seven with Chase Young and everything. So yeah, he's your second round pick. You're going to start him this week. And hopefully some good things will come.
Yeah, so I thought I'd break up the bad news with some good news, but on to more bad. Jarvis Landry for the game tonight, because you'll be hearing this tomorrow. He is questionable with a hip injury. He's been dealing with this for a while. Is there any concern at all, Steve?
So he did play last week's game, even though he had this hip injury. And he's been sitting out practices for 2 weeks now. I still think he's going to play. Is he worth a roster spot? It's a tough one. He's playing against Cincinnati. I would say throw him in your flex if you have to, but try not to because you have no idea what his snap count's going to be. Ben?
Yeah, it's the first time hearing this hip injury, so I can't comment too much on the specifics. But the nice thing, if you have Jarvis Landry, it's a Thursday night game, so it's not like a Monday night where you're waiting until the last minute to see if he's going to be active. You should be able to have a good backup plan if you decide not to send him out there.
100%. So Sorry to talk about this, Steve, but it was reported that Philip Lindsay was to miss multiple weeks with turf toe. Now, he is going for a second opinion. I know sometimes that says it a little bit different, but what's your thoughts on a turf toe, on a sprained toe there, Steve?
It sucks. I'm pretty sure AJ Green was dealing with turf toe a lot in maybe not last year, but the year before. In the last 2 years, he had turf toe and missed quite a bit of time. So I think it just depends on how he if he can stay off of it and get healthy. This is a huge step up for Melvin Gordon because he will be the lead back. Royce Freeman did take a couple snaps in the second half, and he actually didn't look half bad. But Melvin Gordon's definitely a guy that you need to start if you have him now that Philip Lindsay's out. Ben?
Yeah, I think you hit it the nail on the head. This is good for Melvin Gordon owners. He's shown he can be a productive fantasy back when it's just him there. The concern was Philip Lindsay was also going to take a lot of those carries. Royce Freeman, don't worry about Royce Freeman. I don't think he's going to take much points away there. So yeah, for sure, start Melvin Gordon. And that turf coat could linger, so just be aware if you're a Lindsay owner.
100%. All right. So on to the last one, and this one probably hurts a lot of people. George Kittle did not practice today on Wednesday. He's hopeful for Sunday's game, but this was a injury that he hyperextended his knee. He had a similar injury last year. I believe that had him at least playing not great or out for a couple games. So personally, I'd monitor this going forward. What are you thinking, Ben?
George Kittle, yeah. What can you do? It seems like there's a lot of second-round picks this year that it's week 2 already, and you're already having a tough decision about what to do with these guys. Just monitor the situation. I think we'll find out more in the next couple days. So yeah, a lot to keep your eye on this week, but wait till Sunday morning to set your lineups for sure.
Yeah. So from what I understand, Kyle Shanahan says that he will not be practicing at least fully for the next little while, but he fully expects him to play. I don't know if that's just a coach talking, trying to, just talking because he's a coach, right? They're stupid. But they're playing against the Jets. Should be an easy win. I don't even know if you really want to risk Kittle in the game as a coach. If he's now as an owner, if he's active, you play him. It is George Kittle. There's nothing else to say. And as for anybody else on that roster, there's nobody else I would want. Like Jordan Reed, no, I don't really care to pick him up and start him. So if Kittle's there, you start him. If Kittle's not, find somebody on the waiver wire.
All right, so just another one. Kenny Golladay wasn't practicing today. Is there any concern at all? Like, because I mean, he didn't practice a bunch last week, and he could maybe be out again. Steve, what are you thinking?
Yeah, huge concern because I'm one of those guys that was really high on Kenny G this year, and I drafted him in many leagues. I fully expected him to play last week. I don't know exactly what happened, but if he's not ready to go again, I would not be surprised because I mean he was questionable. He was actually not even doubtful. He was just questionable through the whole week, and then Sunday it came out that he was doubtful. So. Yeah, you have to be very cautious. Hopefully you have a backup by now. Ben, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a tough one. I was a guy that also liked Golladay a lot this year, but these hamstring injuries, I believe that's what it is. I think they really linger. So be careful with him. If you got TJ Hawkinson, he was a guy that I think benefited last week. He put up like 16 points without Golladay in the lineup. So that might be a good start this week if it looks like Golladay is not going to be able to be active.
Yeah. So now we'll move on to some football news. And the first one is an update on that Allen Robinson situation. He is back on board. He's ready to go. He had a talk with Nagy and Pace and says that he really does feel wanted there. And he is optimistic about getting re-signed. He doesn't want it to become a distraction for his teammates, so he's going to be out there playing and playing at 100%. Steve, are you seeing any problem with this? Because I don't personally, but I'd love your opinion.
Personally, I think he's just saying exactly what he should say to the media, and that it shouldn't have come out to begin with that there was issues with his contract, because there's issues with probably 40% of people in the league that are contracts are coming up. There's negotiations going on that people aren't happy with. So regardless what he said to the media, there was still an issue, and there's probably still an issue, but he did handle it very well. And I don't really have a comment on it, Ben.
Oh, I love the drama. I love Allen Robinson. I thought it was funny when he changed his Twitter bio. No longer say member of the Chicago Bears. Keep an eye on it. I think Allen Robinson is in a decent situation as it is for fantasy, but I don't think he would be any worse if he got traded, depending, of course, where he goes. So I got Allen Robinson in a couple leagues. I'm okay with the situation. I don't think it's really going to affect his on-the-field play.
Yeah, and I always like to end it off with one funny story, and that is that the dinosaur Frank Gore has been announced as the Jets starter. I mean, this is just Gase just making it Miami 2.0. Steve, what are you thinking?
Oh, I know that you love Frank Gore, Mike, and he's like your favorite football player of all time. But you got to remember, Kalen Ballage just got picked up by them, and I'm pretty sure his career average is close to like 2 yards a carry. So you know what? Watch out for Kalen Ballage and his 2 yards a carry, because he's coming for Frank Gore. Ben, what do you think?
Oh, yeah. Big fan of Ballage. Don't know why that guy is. He seems to always linger around. Never quite in the league, never quite out of the league. Frank Gore, what can you say? I think he's still got a little bit of football left in him, but, it's the Jets. I watched some of that Buffalo game last week, and they did not look good. I think it was worse than the scoreboard made it seem. So there's not a lot in that Jets offense that I want a piece of as a fantasy owner.
And now we're going to go on to some trick or trade from Steven. Get ready and get your pens out, take your score, and let's go.
Mike,
Steve.
what are you 50? Are you over 50% on the year so far?
I think I'm at like 75% almost. I think I got one where I got two out of four, but I mean, I'm killing it.
Okay, well, I'm gonna fool you all on this one. I'm gonna bamboozle you. You guys don't even have a chance on this one, okay? So here we go. You guys ready for the first one of trick or trade?
Oh yeah,
let's go.
Okay, this is so just some clarity here. I took this all from one league, and it's a 1 QB dynasty league, and these trades are all from this season. You don't know at what point this season, but you know what happened this season. Okay, so you're going to have to guess if it's a trick or if it actually happened. First one. Greg Olsen for Evan Ingram. Ben, talk it out.
Ooh, Greg Olsen. I thought, isn't he not in the commentator's booth? He was. I really hope that's a trick. I have a feeling it's a trade because I don't think you would make that up, but I'll say trade.
I'll say trade. I think that someone's really high on him going to Seattle and Evan Ingram being injured all the time.
So did you guys both say trade?
I think so.
I didn't actually hear Ben's answer,
trade.
But
trade.
It was a trade?
Yeah.
So just so you guys know, I don't know if you guys saw it, Greg Olsen put up 10.4 fantasy points in a half PPR last week. And Evan Ingram put up 1.9. So it was a trick. It didn't actually happen.
It's a good trade, though.
Hey, you know what? I got you guys. You guys are both terrible at this game.
I thought you were using reverse psychology.
Yeah.
I mean,
okay.
I consistently consistently get the first one wrong. So
Okay, we're gonna go here for number 2. Dak Prescott for Darius Geis.
I think that's a trade.
I'd say
I think that's a
I'd
trade.
say
I think
trade.
You think that was a trade? Like I said, this could have happened at any point this year. And yes, it was a trade, and it was
it was
me.
you.
I traded for Dak. I got Dak. I traded away Geis.
Yeah. I think I remember you talking to me
Pretty
about
successful.
That's good timing. That's good.
I have to throw myself in there once in a while, make myself feel good. So I've had a couple of my trades on here that didn't end up well, but we'll go on to number 3. And by the way, you guys are 50% right now. Number 3, Le'Veon Bell for Marvin Jones and 2 2021 first-round picks.
My God. I'm going to let Ben go first.
This is the dynasty.
This is a dynasty league, and it was Le'Veon Bell for Marvin Jones and 2 2021 firsts. Trick or trade.
This is another one I hope is a trick, but I'll say trade.
I'll say trick then.
It was a trade.
Hey.
Come on.
And it was actually Colin's trade, I believe. Colin was the one that traded away Lev Bell, and he got Marvin Jones and 2 firsts.
It's looking really good right now.
We're going to jump to the last one. Tevin Coleman, KJ Hamler, and a second 2021 pick for Dalvin Cook.
Oh, Jesus. So you said Tevin Coleman, KJ Hamler, and a 2021 second
for Dalvin Cook.
So let's see. You had 2 trades. I'm going to say that's a trick.
I want to say trick too. It's not a fair deal. We're trading one good thing for 3 pieces of garbage.
You're right. That was a trick. So Ben, I believe, went 75 and Mike went 50.
Hey.
Yeah.
That's you guys did pretty well. You guys beat me. I would say that's a win. I would say that's a win in your guys' books. So good job, guys.
Oh yeah.
Good job.
All right. So next we'll move into the Saints question, the Saints portion of the podcast.
Who that said they're gonna beat them Saints?
Ben is a diehard Saints fan. And I think my first question is going to be about this defensive line. They're clearly great. Shelvin Rankins, I believe, Cam Jordan, David Onyemata. But the only issue is that your other defensive end. Do you see like Davenport has a bunch of injury histories? Do you see any issues with this defensive line at all with him being out?
I don't actually, because I watched the game last week. I took great pleasure in watching Trey Hendrickson sack Tom Brady. Nothing makes me happier than seeing Tom Brady in a Bucs uniform on the ground 10 yards back from the line of scrimmage. I think the defensive line is definitely one of the strengths of the Saints defense. They had a great run defense last season, and that showed that again last week. So no, I think we got some good depth. I know early in the season there was some talk about signing Jadeveon Clowney, trying to do some kind of sign and trade deal. Honestly, as a Saints fan, I'm glad that didn't happen because what he wanted was a little much, and we've got decent defensive ends. So I'd rather reuse that cap space in other places.
All right, Steve, you're up.
Okay, Ben, with Michael Thomas looking like he's going to miss some time, Emmanuel Sanders gets a huge boost. But do you see, other than Sanders and Cook, obviously, do you see any other viable option at wide receiver?
Fantasy-wise, I don't see it. We'll see how it plays out. One of the things about the Saints offense that I love as a Saints fan, but I know can be frustrating for fantasy owners, is they like to throw in all kinds of different plays. You'll see end arounds, Deontay Harris. You'll see Taysom Hill throwing the ball. You'll see Taysom Hill catching the ball, running it. all kinds of different stuff. You'll probably see their backup tight end, a fullback. They really like to spread the ball around, which means the guys stepping in are not necessarily going to be fantasy relevant, but certainly a fun offense to watch. And the top guys are still going to get lots of points because the Saints are going to score lots of points.
All right. Now I'm going to stick with the trenches. I love the big boys. Do you see this New Orleans Saints like offensive line? They really honestly didn't look that great Sunday. I think they were really missing their first round pick Cesar Ruiz, who was out. Do you see any issues coming up with, like, they were ranked number 2 overall in PFF offensive line rankings, but do you see any issues maybe arising in the future if, say, some injuries happened, and would that maybe affect Alvin Kamara or even like any other receivers with Drew Brees maybe not having enough time?
Yeah, that's a tough thing. As Brees is getting older, is definitely something he needs. He's not as mobile, but he does have one of the fastest speeds of getting the ball out from snap to throw, which is helpful. I think the Saints line, when they're healthy, is one of the best offensive lines in the league. Them and the Colts are probably the top 5. There's a couple other lines that are good in there. But the injuries are definitely something to worry about. They don't necessarily have a ton of depth. Getting Cesar Ruiz back out there started, I think, will be good. And their tackles, when they're healthy, Teron Armstead and Ryan Ramczyk, there's no one that can compete with them in the league. And I think you see that with their running backs.
All right, Steve, you're
So
up.
what we really want to know, when Drew Brees goes down and gets hurt, who will be the backup QB, Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston?
Ooh, wow. I'd like to tell you Drew Brees is not going to go down and get hurt. Don't you worry about that. He's got, let's see, how many more games to the Super Bowl? He's got 18 more games left in him this year. If something does happen, I think they'd probably bring Winston in. They like having that option of using Taysom Hill as a gadget player. Peyton always talks him up as the succession, but I think it will be much like we saw when Bridgewater came in last year. You bring Jameis Winston on, and honestly, I'm excited to see. Hopefully, we see some Jameis Winston in garbage time in a couple of these games after Brees puts up a big score.
Steve, do you got any more? I'm trying to think of one.
Best player on the team, Will Lutz. How many leagues do you have him in?
Ooh, I'm actually only in one league that's got kickers, and I don't have Will Lutz. I haven't had Will Lutz in a while. I traditionally stream kickers. Often I don't even draft a kicker, so I never end up getting Lutz. But love that guy. Love their special teams. If there's fantasy punters, I'd have Thomas Morstead for sure. Then he's more like these weird positions. Fantasy long snapper. Someone should invent that.
Hey, let's go for the
That's
brand. Right. All right, so their over-under was set at, I believe it was like around 10.5, 11, 12. What's your prediction for the record? Like, what do you see them winning? Because they're favored in 15 out of their 16 games.
Yeah.
Do you see them going 15-1?
I don't see them going 15-1. They got a tough schedule. They're playing the FC West, I believe. So they're playing Kansas City, which I'm looking forward. They got a lot of good games in their schedule, actually. Tom Brady twice, a couple other good games.
The Bears.
The Bears. Maybe choose a different game that week.
Broncos.
Hey man,
I'm gonna say 12-4. Especially with this Michael Thomas injury, there might be a few games that are struggles, but I think they win that division pretty handily.
Do you see them absolutely blowing out the Raiders this week, or keeping it close? Because they're going to the new stadium.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's too bad there's no fans in that new stadium, but it's gonna be fun to open that stadium. Score prediction for Monday night, I'll say 31-16. It's not going to be a blowout. It's not going to be close. It's going to be a couple touchdowns, I think.
All right. Get her going, Steve.
Okay, I have one last question, and it is we already kind of brought it up, and it's my boy Manuel Sanders. I have him hanging up on my wall behind me. Michael Thomas misses, say, 3 more games. Where do you have Sanders? Do you start Sanders every single week, or are you going to wait and see what he does? I mean, he plays the Raiders. Their defense is, I would say, maybe average, a little bit above average. Are you starting Sanders this week confidently, or are you just going to hold off and wait and see?
I'm starting Sanders this week. I'm not super excited about it, but I think the targets are going to be there for him. And then I wait and see how this week goes. I know Manuel Sanders last year, if you look at his numbers, I think he was kind of hit and miss. He had some really big games. The one against the Saints, he went off on. He had some other duds. But I think he's going to fit into this offense just fine, and he's shown he can be a number 1 receiver. So I'm happy to start Sanders this week, and probably most weeks that Michael Thomas is out.
All right, Ben, do you want to tell us anything more about the Saints?
I just got to give a little shout out. Last week's game to Marshawn Lattimore, the corner, going up against Mike Evans, shut him down. I think he had maybe 1 catch, but it wasn't against Lattimore. I think I saw a stat. He hasn't got a catch on Lattimore since 2018, and they play twice a year. Love that stat. Love when the Saints beat the Bucs, especially now Tom Brady's there, and all these Bucs fans are thinking they're going to be good. But I see them as an 8-8 team. The NFC South still goes through the Saints.
All right. Watch out, Dan Dayton. The Saints are coming. So now we'll move on to the matchups of the week. We each chose 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers to go over. We'll quickly talk about the quarterbacks and tight ends that we chose. And we'll start with the quarterbacks. The 2 ones we have are Ryan Tannehill versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, and Phillip Rivers, the guy with 1 billion kids, versus the Vikings. I'll throw it to Steve first. What are you thinking?
Yeah, Mike and I were kind of going through, trying not to pick, obviously, Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. We were trying to dig deep, find some guys that potentially could be out on the waiver wire for you to grab if you're struggling at QB. So we went with Tannehill against Jacksonville. You know, Jacksonville's their secondary is fairly young, not very experienced. Tannehill probably, it's a run first team, so it's tough to start Tannehill any week. But if he was going to go off, it would be this week. Same with Rivers. Like, we watched Aaron Rodgers just torch the Vikings secondary last week, and Phillip Rivers, they're probably going to be losing. It's the Colts, and it's Phillip Rivers. He's going to turn over the ball a couple times, but he's going to get touchdowns, and he's going to check the ball down to JT, and JT's probably going to score like 6 touchdowns or something. Ben, what do you think about these 2?
Yeah, I like the Phillip Rivers matchup, mostly because it's this week. The Colts did not look good last week. They lost to a Jacksonville team that was supposed to be one of the worst in the league. But I watched that Green Bay-Minnesota game too, and Minnesota secondary was just all over the place. So I think there's any week you're going to start Phillip Rivers, this is the week to do it. Tannehill, it's an okay matchup. I think there's probably other guys you probably want to start, but if you're in a 2 QB league, then Tannehill's a fine start to put in as your QB2.
Yeah, I agree with both points. I think Philly Rivs has a bounce back game, and I think he throws for a couple TDs and only 1 or 2 interceptions, but he did have some heat checks last week, and they were absolutely hilarious interceptions as per usual. But moving on to the running back portion of the matchups of the week. All right, Steve, do you want to go with your first running back?
Yeah, so I have as my start of the week Aaron Jones. Last week, It's a very weird offense that they're in because they did have all three running backs on the field. That's not what you like to see, especially with Aaron Jones, who he's super efficient and he's always been efficient in his career, but he's never until last year had the majority of the snaps. So he still ended up with 15.6 fantasy points. That's because of the touchdown, but that's one thing that Aaron Jones the last 2 years has been dominant in is his touchdowns. He also had 4 receptions, which was a big deal. Not for many yards; it was 10 yards, but if you're half PPR, receptions are always nice. So Aaron Jones is playing the Lions. Their team is not good, but their offense is decent enough to keep them in games. So that's why I like the Aaron Jones pick. He can catch balls in the backfield, and if it is a blowout, he's still going to be on the field pounding the rock down in the fourth quarter. Ben, you want to talk on your guy?
Yeah, I got Austin Eckler this week. I am not a huge Eckler fan. I don't have him in any leagues. I was a little bit worried about him this year. And we saw some struggles in week 1, not going to lie. But and I'm also not here to tell you that everything's going to be fine if you're an Eckler owner. This could be a terrible season for you. But here's the thing. It's week 2. You drafted Austin Eckler round 2. You got to start your guy. You know you're starting Austin Eckler. Don't try to talk yourself out of it. He's got a matchup against the Chiefs. We saw David Johnson on Thursday night put up a lot of numbers, even though the Chiefs pretty handily won that game. So I think Eckler's going to be just fine. He's going to be used better, I think. It wasn't a good game plan with Anthony Lynn. They're running up the middle a lot. I think he does better to the outside. He's going to get a lot of targets. Tyrod didn't look good, but he's going to learn. That offense can only go up. He's going to dump it off more, I think. Eckler's going to get some receptions this week. He's going to get some carries this week. He's going to be just fine. Start your guy.
Yeah, just to add on to that, there were a bunch of times where he was wide open and Tyrod just decided to run for 3 yards. I think he goes back on film and notices that and dumps it off a lot more, and I think Eckler gets a ton of points, especially with the Chiefs making it a shootout. But my guy is Ronald Jones, Rojo, versus the Panthers. I thought Ronald Jones looked great last week. Sorry. I thought he looked great. He looked great running between the tackles. Leonard Fournette stinks. So if you drafted him before Ronald Jones, you're kind of a dumb, but whatever. And I think Ronald Jones gets, I'm going to say it, probably 15 to 20 fantasy points in a PPR setting. Ooh. And I think Leonard Fournette maybe gets 5. So I see them absolutely blowing out the Panthers. They're pissed about losing to the Saints and no Godwin or Evans, so they're just going to run the ball. And our last start of the week was Raheem Mostert versus the Jets. The Jets stink, and Mostert looked pretty explosive last week. He was one of the fastest players from advanced stats. Do you guys want to talk about anyone else?
No.
Yeah, so just on Eckler, I think you're going to see him get more receptions. I think that's the only he still put up he didn't put up a huge fantasy week, but I think he was close to 10 points. But yeah, you have to start Eckler. You drafted him to start him, so
yeah.
All right, so on to the wide receiver position. Steve, you had Hollywood Brown, I believe?
I sure did, and they're playing Houston, and Houston's defense is not good. So that's why we have Hollywood here. You could also throw in Mark Andrews, but because Mark Andrews is an insta-start because you probably drafted him in the 4th round, we went with Hollywood. So I love Hollywood. He's been in my flex position. I think that's a perfect spot for him because you probably drafted him in the 7th or 8th round. So you have, your majority of your starters, and he's probably going to fall into that wide receiver 2 range by the end of the season, the way that he's playing and the way that Lamar can lead that team to the red zone. Hollywood's going to get an 8, 9, potentially 10 touchdowns end of year. But who knows? It might come in certain burst games. This would be one of those games against Houston where Deshaun Watson can put up points too. So start your Hollywood Browns. And Ben, who is your wide receiver start?
We already talked about him a little bit. I got my boy Manny Sanders, Manuel, taking over for Michael Thomas, wide receiver 1 tonight. Not tonight, Monday night. We've talked a little bit about why you want to start him. I'll talk a little bit about the matchup. He's facing the Las Vegas Raiders. Last week, Carolina played them. Robbie Anderson put up a ton of points, getting passes from Teddy Bridgewater. That's Robbie Anderson. You now have Emmanuel Sanders, much better receiver, catching passes from a much better quarterback, and a better offense overall. I think the Saints are going to put up lots of points. And Manuel Sanders, I'm going to say he's not going to have a huge ceiling because the Saints are going to spread the ball around, but he's got a decent floor, I think. So I think he probably gets 15 points in a PPR league, and he gets a touchdown.
All right. So my start of the week is Adam Thielen versus the Colts. Gardner Minshew threw on this Colts defense and looked pretty good. That goes along with the Phillip Rivers start. What am I doing? No,
Phillip Rivers played against
Adam Thielen.
They're both in the game.
Well, they're both in the game, whatever it counts. No, Kirk Cousins actually looked like he could throw the ball last week, and mind you, it was when they were getting absolutely blown out. And he got 2 garbage time TDs, but I think he still goes off this week. He looked really good. He was catching absolute bombs from Kirk Cousins because apparently Kirk can throw now. Mind you, they didn't throw that often, but I think that Zimmer sees an issue with that as they got blown out last week, and he throws the ball a bit more. And he's one of the only targets that Kirk actually trusts. Justin Jefferson looked not great. But I think you start on Thielen, you have him probably as your wide receiver 1, maybe your wide receiver 2 if you're lucky. And then another one is Gallup versus the Falcons. I think Gallup's going to absolutely go off against the Falcons because the Falcons defense is terrible. We were obviously going to put Cooper in here, but he's an obvious start. You drafted him to be your wide receiver 1. So do you guys want to talk about any of these guys?
So Adam Thielen, how do you feel about the real number 1 on that team, Tajay Sharp, Mike?
Don't bring that guy up. Let's not talk
BC
about
Johnson. How about BC Johnson?
BC.
He's stinks.
Okay, yeah, no. Start Thielen. Gallup had a really rough week 1, but against an Atlanta team that's gonna probably I just know that Matt Ryan is going to throw for over 500 yards in a game this year. Like he hit 450 last game. So, if it's going to be a high scoring, this game is going to be high scoring. Atlanta's defense isn't good, and I think Gallup is going to torch them. Ben, do you have any takes on Gallup?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that'd be a fun game to watch. Dallas, Atlanta. Should be a lot of fantasy points involved. The Cowboys wide receiver room is a little bit difficult to figure out this year because we got Amari Cooper, who was a stud last year. We got Gallup, who's been up and coming, and then we got CeeDee Lamb thrown in the mix. But I think there is the potential for all of them to be fantasy relevant at different times. And not a bad spot to start Gallup this week for sure.
All right, so we have 2 tight ends for our matchups of the week, and it is Jared Cook of the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, Ben wants to talk about him. And then Hunter Henry versus the Kansas City Chiefs. I'll start. I'll switch it up. I had Jared Cook as my top 5 tight end. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep that going because I'm going to tell everyone that I was right and I knew it was going to happen, that Michael Thomas stinks. Not actually, but I think Jared Cook is probably the most solid target in that offense. He looked good last week, and the Las Vegas Raiders, they do have decent linebackers, but I don't think they can stick with an athletic tight end like Jared Cook. And then Hunter Henry actually looked really good last year. I mean, it's only a matter of time. It's a ticking time bomb before he breaks his knees apart. But ride him until he falls apart. Let's start, Ben. You can go first.
Yeah, I'll talk about Jared Cook. Love this player. Love this matchup. Start Jared Cook for sure. We talked about Michael Thomas being out. That means there's probably 7 or 8 slants that need hands on the other end of that pass. Jared Cook's going to take a couple of those. Las Vegas, I believe their one linebacker, it starts with a K, I can't pronounce it, got injured. So a little bit depleted at linebacker. And Jared Cook looked good last game. Cut a lot of passes. Start Jared Cook for sure. Even if you got a stud tight end, you got a Kelsey and you got Jared Cook on your bench as your tight end too, see if you can put him in your flex spot because he's going to have a good game.
Yeah, I like what I like about both of these guys is they both balled out last week in the tight end category. They finished it in just receiving yards. They finished at 3 and 4, and that's where you don't really see the tight ends. Like you don't see them high up. And Jared Cook had 80 yards receiving, and Hunter Henry had 73. Usually rely on the touchdowns, so that's why I like these two. You guys already touched on Jared Cook and how athletic he is, and I think he's such a threat downfield as well as in the slot too. So that's what I love Jared Cook. I didn't expect too much from him this year because Emmanuel Sanders was coming in, but with Michael Thomas down, obviously he gets a huge bump up. I have him probably in my top 5 this week alone. Hunter Henry was the top receiver last week for Tyrod, and I can see that happening again. They're playing against the Chiefs, so Tyrod's going to have to throw the ball quite a bit, and Hunter Henry's a big body, 6'5", 250. I think Hunter Henry's going to have another monster week. If he can find the end zone, probably another 75, 80 yards and a touchdown would be really nice. Mike?
All right, now into our final segment, and it is games of the week, the games that we want to watch. Maybe we have some fantasy guys in them. Maybe we just think they're going to be exciting. And Steve, I'll throw it to you for your first game, just one.
My first game, okay, you guys already know that I'm going Broncos Steelers. Obviously I'm picking the Broncos. That's the only game I really care about. That's probably the only game I'm going to watch because football sucks. I'm just kidding. I'm probably going to watch every game, but I'm actually excited for this game. I hope Cortland Sutton's back. It's going to be a defensive battle. The Broncos defense actually played really. I don't know if you guys probably didn't watch it. It was a late Monday game, but the Broncos defense.
I fell asleep at halftime.
It was a boring game, but the defense did play really well. That's the Broncos though. That's Broncos of the last 6 years. Is their defense is phenomenal. I think with James Conner injured, Benny Snell isn't that great, and they kept Derrick Henry, under 4 yards a carry, and he's a monster. I think he actually got tackled twice behind the line of scrimmage, which is insane. So you're gonna have to rely on Juju for that game, but I'm excited for the Broncos. I think they're gonna have a bounce back offensive week, even though the Steelers defense is phenomenal. I probably expect definitely take the under. Definitely take the under on this game. Ben, you want to take your first matchup?
Yeah, I got to give a shout out, first of all, to the NFL for the scheduling they did this week. Not a ton of great games this week, but the ones they did, I thought they put in good slots. Even starting with the Thursday night, the Thursday night games always seem to be these divisional matchups with these mediocre teams. And this one fits the bill with Browns and Bengals, but I'm excited to watch this because we got Baker and Burrow. But my first game is the Sunday nighter. We got the Seahawks and the Patriots. Really excited to see how this one plays out. We saw the debut of Cam Newton, who was fantastic running with the Patriots. Now, granted, this was against the Miami Dolphins team that maybe is not the best team. So a little bit tougher matchup here against the Seahawks, who, although they got blown up last week by Matt Ryan, on paper have a pretty good secondary. And then the Seahawks facing New England. I think this is going to be kind of a test to see what New England is about. We kind of know how good of a team Seattle is. This New England team is a little bit more of a mystery. So I think it's going to be a fun game and decent game for fantasy players too.
All right, so on to my first one, and it is a absolute defensive battle, and it is the Bears versus the Giants. Of course, I got to watch my Bears play the Giants. I predict this as another great game for Trubisky. He gets a good start to the year with the Lions, the Giants, the Falcons, and I think it's gonna actually be a pretty good game. You're gonna finally see what the Bears defense can do versus Daniel Jones. I think Daniel Jones fumbles the ball at least 2 times. If Robert Quinn can come back, that'll be definitely great for the pass rush, and I think they get a couple sacks, a couple interceptions, maybe. I think it's going to be a great game. I definitely say take the under because who knows what these offenses are going to do. But, I always ride with the over. I always want to see good games. So, Steve, your final matchup.
So this one is going to be a battle of the offenses, in my opinion. I know that this is the Baltimore-Houston match, and I know Baltimore's defense is phenomenal, and the Texans have Watt on the defensive line. So, whatever. It's going to be an offensive battle. You have Lamar, you're going to start him. You have Mark Ingram, you're going to start him. J.K. Dobbins, you could probably flex him in this match. Hollywood Brown, we already talked about, start. Mark Andrews, you have to use him as well. On the Houston side, Deshaun Watson, he's gonna have a decent game, I think, because he's gonna have to be playing catch up. David Johnson, you probably have to start him. I don't know. There's so many different receivers that the Texans have to. Will Fuller balled out in week 1. He didn't look that great, but he ended up having over 100 yards. So I really like this matchup. I'm excited for it. Ben, what do you think?
Yeah, that'd be a good game. Tough schedule for Houston the first 2 weeks, facing Kansas City and then Baltimore. But hopefully, Baltimore played the Browns last week, and it was a blowout. Hopefully a little more interesting game because I really do enjoy watching that offense and seeing what Lamar Jackson gets up to. Yeah, good game. I got one more matchup here. And once again, I talked about Thursday night briefly. We talked about the Sunday night. I'm talking about the Monday night. We got the Saints going into Las Vegas, opening that stadium. It's going to be good. It's going to be a good game. Fantasy-wise, we talked a lot about the Saints players already. We had Josh Jacobs, who had a great week last week, but granted it was against Carolina defense. So now this is kind of where we see what he's all about. Of course, you're going to start Jacobs, but if I'm a Jacobs owner, it's going to be a little bit more nerve-wracking week because we're facing a pretty tough Saints run defense. Other than that, on the Raiders, you got Darren Waller. You're probably starting him. There's not really anyone else. Even in a 2 QB league, I'm not touching Derek Carr. In the receiver room, there's not much there. But certainly a good game to watch. And you got some Saints players. Hopefully they win you the game. Win you your matchup on Monday night.
Oh, yeah, I got Alvin Kamara, and I'm hoping for a big game against the Raiders. But and on to my last matchup, and I have a matchup that might as well be called points, and yards. It is the Cowboys and the Falcons. And, these teams have meh defenses and absolute great offenses. I think you definitely have to start Matty Ice. You definitely have to start Dak. Zeke is going to run all over this Falcons defense. And I even think Hayden Hurst is a good start. The Rams last week, Tyler Higbee had 3 receptions for 40 yards. Gerald Everett had a single reception, but they were getting open. And I think Matt Ryan really, really targets Hurst, and I think this is finally a bounce back game. I know he hurt you guys last week. We've been hyping him up, but if he can't do it against the Cowboys, I just am gonna kind of be off him and kind of have him as a hold. I mean, start every Cowboys offensive player, maybe even CD Lamb. I'll go out on a limb and say he's going to ball out this week. What are you guys thinking?
Ben, what do you think?
Yeah,
about
I'm not starting CD Lamb. I think it's a little early in the season. But those Atlanta guys, obviously you're starting Julio, you're starting Calvin, you're starting Matt Ryan. I love Matt Ryan this year. He's going to have a big year. I've got him in a couple leagues as a late pick. I think it's going to be another good matchup. Now, that being said, if Matt Ryan balls out again and puts up another 400 yards, that could be a sell high candidate too, because he's had some good matchups these first couple weeks.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, and also one thing that I wanted to bring up, Dallas's superstar linebacker Leighton Vander Esch is now on the IR, so he's not going to be in the game. That's a big hit to their defense. So I mean, Matt Ryan was probably still going to put up 350 passing yards anyways, but like you guys said, start your big guys. I'm not starting. I'm starting Gallup. I'm not too high on CD, but if you have to, throw him in your flex spot because I do think it's going to be high scoring. Russell Gage, I'm not taking a shot on him this week either. But you never, if you have to, he's still there too. He's an option. Mike, are you gonna take us out now?
Yeah, I'll take us out. And first, I'd like to thank Ben for doing the podcast. Colin is going to be missing every second show, so we'll keep this cast rotating. Maybe we'll have Ben back on. Who knows?
Thank you boys for having me. It's a fun time. Before we go, I just want to give a quick shout out to last week's guest, John Bice. I don't know if you guys noticed, but in that episode, in passing, he said Malcolm Brown gets 2 touchdowns this week. And he did get 2 touchdowns. So I'm going to add my own little segment, ad-libbed here, called the Hot 2 Touchdown Take, where I'm going to take some scrub. I'm going to say he gets 2 touchdowns. It's probably not going to happen. You shouldn't start him. But it could be a fun thing if it happens. So this week I'm taking Paris Campbell because we talked about that Minnesota cornerbacks. I think he's going to have a good season. Maybe not this game, but that's my hot take. It's been a good show. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, no worries. So throw Paris Campbell in.
Don't do it.
I was talking up Paris Campbell earlier in the week, and Mike and Colin shit on me saying that he's terrible, and I was like, no, this dude's gonna ball out. He had 9 receptions, I think, last game, and Phillip Rivers kept checking down to him. Come on, guys, Ben and I are on the Paris Campbell.
I don't remember crapping on Paris Campbell because he was one of my sleepers this year, but I don't know, I could be wrong. But to take us out, follow us at our Twitter at Day1Football. And if you want, follow our fantasy accounts at Day1 Big Mike and at Day1 Daddy. That is Steve. Follow us on our Instagram at Day1Football, all spelt out. And subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. It really helps us grow. And you can maybe we'll have a community. Well,
no.
See ya.
No, we won't.
Just to shake it all off. All the cool cats from the alley seem to rally back out. But my heart, my mind, my liver has had quite enough. Almost scared of brain. Yeah, hit me like a freight